Blog Talk Radio. This is dedicated to you. Black man, my heart bleeds for you as you go through your daily struggle called life. I am here with my arms outstretched to reassure you that everything is going to be all right. Nothing on earth can make me shy away from you, nor cause me to turn my back on your love. You are needed more than you will ever know. Trust me. Black man, I appreciate all your efforts and support you in all your dreams. I am your best friend. When the world lets you down, I am here to help pick you up, dust you off, bandage your wounds, and lift your spirit. When blatant or subtle racism comes your way, and when you feel you just can't take much more today, take a deep breath, say a little prayer, look deep within and reflect on the love that I have for you. Black man, you are somebody. There is no me without you. You are the strongest in all the universe. Society nor media will ever tell you of your importance, but I will. I am here to serve as your comforter and a constant reminder that your value is priceless.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, the one and true God, and in the name of His prophets and messengers, who came to us to give us the knowledge of Himself, I want to greet all of you in the greetings of peace of Assalamu Alaikum, which means peace be unto you. The only disclaimer that I have to offer you is that the views represented in this broadcast are solely represent the participants of this program, and this show is protected by the Son of Man. Welcome to the Resurrection Show, the Sword of Resurrection Show. I'm your host, Philip Muhammad, and today who's bringing his sword is our brother Shango. He's a former principal of New York City, the Department of Education at IS 109, and he's coming on to actually discuss an attack on his career and his international efforts related to education and the plot to miseducate black youth in America. I'd like to make a correction about our last show. In our last show, I mentioned a definition of the word denial. Actually, I mistakenly said another word in place of that definition, and I just want to briefly apologize for that. I also want to apologize for a mistake I made, which was to use the word hello when someone actually called, because the word hello means hell. And in my opinion, the O represents the cycle of death that has circled the country and the entire world. The proper way to greet people is the way the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has taught us, and all those who are righteous have done and exercised, which is to say peace. So I just want to just state those two corrections. And moving on, the name of the show is Satan's Wicked Hand Under the Skirt of Your Education. And why did we name it this? It's named this because a skirt is a covering of a woman's womb, and it's there and it's styled to protect her womanhood, you know. And in a proper society where the men protect the women, that womanhood will be protected not only by the skirt but by the men. Now, when we send our children into these school systems, we are extending our support, and we are extending our trust to the school system to be extension of a skirt, a long skirt, if you will. However, under that skirt is a hand that has a ulterior motive, you know, and that ulterior motive is rooted in evil. And, you know, we can't turn our children into evildoers. We wouldn't do it. But if we continue to do this, that's exactly what that hand intends to do. For example, of the reputations that have been destroyed by those who go against this system. There's an example here that I'd like to mention, you know, as we go into this interview with our brother Shango. There's a man named John Freshwater, and that man was fired from school, from being a teacher, because he refused to remove a Bible from his desk. And that teacher, they said, according to this article I read, they said that he burnt a cross on a student's arm. But there was a pastor who was actually investigating And he said that that wasn't the case, that the only thing that he could find was it was true that he had a Bible on his desk, and he could not find any truth to the other allegation. And you will find that in Brother Shango's case, it's very similar to what happened to this man. They throw truth and falsehood into a nice mesh, and they call it the news, the media, and people eat it up. The righteous have a cross to bear, and we must stand against this, and I hope and pray that as a result of this interview, that we inspire you to take a stand against this oppression. And the Honorable Minister Farrakhan just gave a powerful speech, and I'm so filled right now because of what he just said. He spoke in San Francisco, and he said America is turning into a fascist state. You know, this day of injustice that is happening to our teachers and students will come to an end, for slavery comes in various forms. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that debt is a form of slavery. And so it gives me great pleasure to say, as a child of slaves, what goes around comes around. The U.S. debt, according to the National Debt Clock, has continued to increase at an average of $3.94 billion a day since September 28th. All right, so this is what we're dealing with. And in San Francisco, by the way, there's been a lot of layoffs, and the layoffs have affected the faculty and staff. They intend, according to an article that I read in the Examiner, San Francisco Examiner, they intend to lay off 218 faculty and staff, including 65 superintendents. You know, one of the protesters in another article that was written on the 7th, as that other article was written on the 8th, the day before, a protester said they're trying to get rid of experienced teachers through intimidation and evaluations. These are wrongful evaluations. And let's bring it home to New York. Recently in New York, in a 2011 article in New York One, there was an announcement of the slow death of the educational system, which came in the form of this quote: city lawmakers reached a budget deal Friday that will avert layoffs of about 4,100 teachers, partially through union concessions. But the city won't pay to replace thousands more public school instructors who quit or retire this year. Now, that will be moving into 2012. And at the grand opening of the new flagship clothing store of Forever 21 at Times Square in June of 2010, I attended a joint interview where I asked New York's Mayor Mike Bloomberg. I asked him a question off this subject, but it brought out information from and about the state of the budget. And he said, speaking of it, he said, goodness knows we're having a tough time doing that. And what he was saying was that he was having a tough time paying the firemen, teachers, and police. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said this, and this is a quote that I'd like to state before we get into this interview. How pathetic a sight many of us make as we boast of our meager education and the attainment of a measure of economic growth. All these things are an illusion. When rightly viewed, your education has been designed by your oppressors with the specific intent of keeping you servitude. Your economic growth has been achieved by installment buying, which is now clearly shown to be everything. We have nothing. What, then, is the basis of our vaunted and foolish pride? Something must be wrong upstairs. I ask you, how in the name of common sense can we be satisfied with our roles of servitude as the helpless victims of injustice? If we have simple intelligence and love for our fellow man, we must sound the alarm and let the world know we are not satisfied. We must shake off the dead, dumb, and blind shackles that have beset us for generations and move towards unity of our kind. This is the truth. The truth hurts. I will speak it or die. I am not afraid to die for truth indeed. I did not take this mission to try and save my life. I took this mission to fulfill truth, even as the cost of death. We must unite at all costs. Brothers and sisters, the black man today, in my opinion, and that was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the Fall of America book, by the way. And in my opinion, the black man today is like a pinball. We get bounced around from one so-called Jewish or so-called Caucasian brother of a racist mind, not all of them, just the racist ones, the beneficiaries of slavery. And we get bounced from one to another and end up in a hole. That hole is dead. And then when we get our money, finally get up again, we go right back to that same system again and go through that same system of bouncing from one to the other, from the judge to the person who's going to offer us a insurance deal, et cetera, but we end up broke every time. The sad part about it is we keep on putting money in the pinball machine. We need to stop supporting this system and have one of our own. Brother Shango, you still there?
Yes, sir.
All right, Brother Shango, let's talk about your dispute. Now, let me just let the people know why you're here and what happened, and then you can write into it. Now, according to an article that was written in January 10 of 2009, a man wrote that Brother Shango, known as Shango-Blake, was accused of stealing money, assaulting a child, and even running into two teachers with his car. He was then terminated by the New York City Department of Education, and then he appealed to New York State. According to the article, he quoted an arbitration where they wrote that Brother Shango threatened the student and cursed and punched the child and all kinds of things. So Brother Shango, I've also found that you did some amazing things. So we want to get it from the beginning. Let's go right from the beginning. What happened?
So first of all, let me just start off by saying assalamu alaikum to you, Brother Philip, and thank you for inviting me onto your program and giving me this platform to speak to you about my personal struggle with the Department of Education and my accomplishments. And I just want to be clear that the purpose for me coming on your program is not so much it is to highlight what I went through, but with the specific purpose of painting a picture of what's happening with black educators throughout the country, specifically within the city of New York, and black male educators in particular, because it has bearing on the control of education for our people and the direction of education for our children.
Okay. That's wonderful, brother. And I also want to talk about how that school, PS 109, turned around from a plague of low test scores, poor attendance, gang violence, and low teacher morale. So take us from the beginning.
Yes. It is IS 109, Intermediate School 109, which is a middle school in Queens Village, New York. When I first became the principal of Intermediate School 109, it was the second lowest performing school in reading and math. The school was violent in the sense that it had many violent incidents, anything that you could put on a major crime statistics like robbery, gang violence, fighting, things of that nature. There was a low community confidence in terms of parents not wanting to send their children to that school. The attendance of both the staff and the students was very high, and the morale of the teachers was very low. When I came in, we put a program in place to begin to change the culture of the school, and within 15 months of me being there, we were number one in reading and math in the entire district, and we remained number one under my leadership. When I first came there, the students wore, and this is very significant to the story, they wore, all kinds of clothes that were considered fashion at the time, Sean, John, Rockaway, Fat Farm, things of that nature. And when you put that in a school setting, these are the things that are distracting to the educational environment. Not only is it distracting, but it's a lot of times it is the root of where conflict begins, bullying begins, because if one young person has the means and ability to wear these fashionable clothes and another one doesn't, then the one who doesn't becomes a target or lashes out because he doesn't. We were able to, however, use hip-hop culture in a unique way to encourage academic excellence, and I'll talk about that, as we get into the interview. We engaged parents in a very innovative way. We created a group of parents called the PEST, and PEST stood for Parents Empowering Students Today, and the goal in the mind was if you want your child to be successful tomorrow, you don't start tomorrow. You start today by getting in their behind, and you start by being a PEST. And these parents would secure a 5-block radius of the school and make sure that their gangs would not come within a 5-block radius of the school. And these were men out there involved with the children in the morning and in the afternoon and even during the school day. We opened up the school to all kind of community groups, midnight basketball, Kwanzaa events, gospel concerts, and Eid celebrations. And we also introduced new curriculum into the school that was a significant part of the school raising its standard in terms of academics. Programs like pre-nursing, pre-law, pre-engineering, dance, drama, art, and even a manhood development class.
Wow. So let me just ask you, because something else happened that was that even hit the news. There was a 17-year-old boy. I think he was 11. And
11 years old, yeah.
He was 11 years old, and he was noted for doing a miraculous thing. And you were mentioned, and Oprah was involved. Tell us about that.
Well, like I said to you just a minute ago, we had a pre-nursing program that we brought to the school where the students would learn first aid, pharmacology, and they would learn everything that you would need to get your LPN license. It was an LPN curriculum, but it actually was modified to fit within a junior high school setting, and it was the only program in the country like that. And the student who was in that program had went home, and his aunt went into emergency, about to give birth, and he was able to deliver her based upon what he learned in the class. And as a result of that, we were both featured on in People magazine and ultimately on the Oprah Winfrey Show in terms of wonderful things that schools were doing with children, and he was featured as a child prodigy.
And that was a wonderful article, and that young boy's name was Schneider Metellus, correct?
Yes.
Right. Okay, now let's go into the incidents and these allegations before we go into solutions and some of the current things that are happening to teachers and principals and people who care within the school system. These allegations are quite serious, and as I mentioned about the gentleman who was sideswiped out of his career, much like what happened with you, he put a Bible on the table, and they tried to say he burnt somebody with a cross, and then they brought an independent investigator in who was a pastor, and he testified on that person's behalf. Now, we brought some testimonies. You brought some testimonies with some audio testimonies that we are definitely going to play, and I want you to drive. Which one would you like to play first, and so forth? You know, we have the one from the chancellor, and we have one of a child's testimony.
You can start off with the child testimony.
Okay, since we are in children, I think that's appropriate. I'm going to play a testimony of a child. We're not going to mention her name, but we are definitely going to play it so that you can understand the spirit of Brother Shango a little bit more.
Thank you so much. Well, this is the iPhone 9 premiere for the DVD that we made. And it has kids in it. It shows there's kids rappers in it. Our principal, Mr. Blake, he raps a little verse in it, and it's very exciting. And it has a lot of energy, and it's just great. Oh yes, I've seen those TV stars so funny, and to do it myself is really great. Thank you.
Now, that child was definitely in support of you. When was that statement made in relation to what happened?
Well, that statement was made well before the allegations and the things that you're talking about. But I think it's critical because what I was charged with or accused of initially was stealing money or misappropriation of funds. And one of the things that they put in the Daily News and specifically the New York Post was there was this title that said, it's a rap for the principal with a picture of me. And what they were trying to say was that because we had done this innovative thing with hip-hop in terms of using hip-hop music to transform the culture of the school and bring the school community together around change, we had a big premiere, and we had the students picked up in limousines, and they walked the red carpet, and the parents applauded them like we were their fans as they walked into York College, and we were giving the young people, the students there, positive reinforcement for doing positive things and letting them know how special they was because the students actually participated in making a hip-hop song, a video. They did the script writing, the storyboarding, the filming, the editing. They laid out the budget. And what we did was we connected all this project-based assignment to the New York State Learning Standards. So that was a way in which not only did we change the culture, but we actually made math relevant to the students because they were applying it to something that they had an interest in. And we made reading and writing relevant because we took the classic literature and connected it to today's society, and that's how they came up with their essays, then their poems, then their haikus, and then their actual lyrics for the song. So there was a clear academic focus and process involved. So this young lady made the statement as she was walking on the red carpet, walking into the actual premiere, and the noise that you heard in the background was the parents clapping and applauding. And the actual accusation against me, they made it seem like that I had used school funds to buy limousines as if I was riding around in limousines myself. And this is the technology and the half-truths that were put in the media that you spoke about before. So they gave they mentioned it out of context to give a perception, but what they didn't tell you was that this was a premiere. It was a premiere based upon a student assignment and a student project, and that the limousines were for the children, and that we, the parents, were outside. That particular night, it was a major snowstorm. You had about 200 to 300 parents outside that venue celebrating students as they walked in, and you had over 1,000 parents show up on the heels of a major snowstorm to celebrate the work that the children were doing in Southeast Queens, specifically at Intermediate School 109.
And that is evidence that school was in shambles before you came, because when a school comes up the way it came up under your auspices, parents will go all out because of success in the light of darkness. They came out in a storm, and the thanks that you got was the thrashing of your reputation. Let's talk about that. How intense was this campaign against you?
No, but it was extremely intense. And before
it made national news, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. And before it actually made national news, there was a 2-year investigation where they investigated. These investigators would come to the school literally every 2 to 3 weeks to harass me, to create doubt about me and my to my staff. They investigated the school books, the school ledger, my personal bank account to see whether or not I was transferring money from my account, from the school's account to my account, and it was just relentless. And then after that happened, there was a media campaign that went on while I was still working as a principal in the school. And with all of that happening, we still maintained number one reading and math every year because we didn't take our eyes off the prize. We kept our focus on the work, and as a result of that, we were successful. So after they couldn't, they did all of this, And if you look at the history, the first article about me never mentioned anything about a young man and an incident involving me getting physical with the young man. It was all rooted and based on finances. And the second article was about the finances and a little blurb about the young man at the end. And then it shifted from the finances, which took a backseat, and it became about the young man. Because after doing 2 years of an investigation, the office is called the Special Commissioner of Investigation. And they have broad investigative powers. And after they could not make any findings of misappropriation of funds, they dropped that case, and then they proceeded to go forward with a new case, which was me allegedly beating up a young man in the school.
What about the other allegation of you nearly hitting teachers with a car? What was that?
That wasn't even New York City public schools. That was in Yonkers public schools. So those two are not connected. Two separate different districts. But that was during the time of a strike. And I was coming to school one morning, and the teachers were out there striking. And what they did was they physically attacked my vehicle. And the police, the Yonkers Police Department, that was supposed to make sure that there were barriers and that the teachers were not blocking entrance ways or exit ways in and out of the school, they allowed the teachers to make these blockages. And as I came in, they scratched my car, they used racial epithets, the N-word, all these different things. And when I finally got into the parking lot, I inched my way in. When I finally got into the parking lot, the police pulled up, and all of a sudden someone said they were hit by my vehicle. Okay, and it was basically all staged. When the police came over, they said to me, you hit the teacher. I said, I didn't hit the teacher. I said, and you were supposed to be keeping the airway, the place, the entrance and exit points clear. And when I said that, they just wrote it up as an accident. But what happens is that the police officers have their union, the teachers have their union, and sometimes they do things in solidarity. And so, what ended up being just, no charges, no arrests, no nothing. And again, the news blew it up big because there was some underlying racial issues that existed at the time. I was one of 4 black administrators that now became the new black administration of a school that traditionally had white administrators, but 90% of the students were black and Latino. And so I was faced with those perceptions, and then me being the youngest and a black male, it made it believable that I would do something like that when I didn't.
So would you say that these allegations, including the one that you met with this in this incident, do you think the allegations were racially motivated, and if so, why?
Oh yeah, they definitely were racially motivated. I mean, like I told you, when I pulled up that morning in Yonkers, the teachers were outright yelling out, we don't need nigger administrators. I mean, this was not
right, but that's that in that situation. What about in the current situation that you're dealing with? I mean, what do you have of that, if that's the case?
Well, and you're talking about the school at IS-109, I was the first black principal of that school. And
okay, we're talk about the demographics.
And I was, and not only that, but when you look at it, the average teacher when I first got there was 15 to 20 years my senior. And so I very early on was faced with resistance about any suggestions that I would make for change. And I always find it interesting because I would say that at the time, 30% of the staff there were white. And then about, I would say, 85% of the staff, the students in the school were black and Latino, and the rest were like Indian and Guyanese. So when I came in and started bringing a different format and a different approach, the resistance was both to me and the change that I was bringing. And let me be very clear, it's not just being a black principal or black male principal that creates the attitude of resistance and attack, because you have many black principals that are in these schools, but they won't stand up and do what is necessary to actually institute change and bring about what a quality education for our young people, so they can move through the system and actually be promoted for their incompetence. They can become your next superintendent. They can become your deputy mayor. They can become your chancellor. But if you look at the track record and look at what they've actually done to institute change that is beneficial to our children and our community, you will see that their years of service has not produced any results. So it is not the educator, the black educator, educational leader just in itself. It is the black educational leader that stands up and says, wait a minute, we are going to provide quality education in our schools, and there's going to be a bottom line in terms of what you do, and that creates the problem. I'm very clear about what happened with me. When I came in on a change agenda, and I didn't accept teachers not teaching. When I walked in the hallways and I saw teachers reading newspapers and classrooms out of control, I addressed that, and if you were going to have that mindset, then you were going to have a problem with me. And eventually I ended up getting rid of, through either resignation, through termination, or them transferring 15 of those teachers, core teachers, that didn't have the best interest of the love in their heart for our children. And as a result of that, that's where the political backlash came from.
I see. So what you did basically was not only influence, but you took action. And that action you took, by any means necessary, upsetted the powers that be. Now, I'm gonna get into something else on another angle. I'm hearing some beats. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, there's a little feedback coming in. And there's a caller as well. We're going to get to that caller. Just stand by, caller. Okay. I'm not sure what that feedback is, but let's try to niche that. Okay, now a writer in the Baltimore Times, Jane Matthews, recently wrote an article dated on the 20th of 2012. 2010 report published by Southern Poverty Law Center puts Trayvon's school troubles in a more informed context. The national study by educational researchers Daniel J. Lawson and Russell Skiba examined more than 9,000 middle schools and found that 28.3% of black males on average were suspended at least once during a school year, nearly 3 times the 10% rate of white males. What do you have to say about this, Brother Shango, and what role do principals of schools play in this who assist in bringing about these staggering numbers?
Well, let me offer you a couple of more statistics and put it in a deeper context.
Go ahead.
Black males, in particular, from the age of their birth to about 3 years old, are at the top performance level in developing language, developing motor skills, developing speech patterns, understanding of concepts. And by the time they reach the 3rd grade, those same black boys are it's absolutely reversed. They're at the bottom. So when they get into the school system, something is happening to reverse that trend. Now, when you look at a major city like Oakland, which I'm going to use as an example, more than half of the middle school students, black male students, are predicted that they will not graduate. And when you look in New York City, more than half of the black males in high school will not graduate. And then you have, out of those who graduate, more than half of those students are graduating functionally illiterate and entering into community college and having to take remedial classes. So it's clear that there's a certain assault on because we got to wrestle with 1, 2 things. We have to either say, 1, that these black boys are dumb, or 2, something is happening where they are under assault.
I agree.
And that assault is coming out of a perception of who they are. Now, let me give you an insider's perspective. When I was a guidance counselor at an elementary school level, I used to run a group counseling session, and I had a lot of young black boys in my group, and they were literally, and most of the classes that they were in, and if you ever read the book Countering Conspiracies to Destroy Black Boys by Dr. Kawanza Kajufu, he talks about the dynamic of having female teachers, white female teachers, over these bright black boys, and their perception of their intellect, their aptitude, and their energy is received by these teachers as one being hyperactive, two being aggressive. And so they approach them in a different manner. Now, I used to run the committee on special education when I was a guidance counselor in the elementary school. And the teachers would come to me, and we would have these team meetings about students and problems and referrals. And the teachers would come to me, and in this committee, you were supposed to find solutions to try to help these boys. And the first thing that they would say, we need to put them in special education. Now, these are boys in grade 2 and grade 3. We need to put them in special education. There's nothing I can do to teach them. They wouldn't evaluate their teaching strategy or think about maybe I need to try a different approach within the classroom, or maybe I need to think about gender when I'm dealing with teaching because girls learn in one way, boys learn in another way. Their immediate attitude was, we need to place them in special education. Well, what happens when they get placed in special education? Now, they say that special education is supposed to keep up with mainstream education in terms of the curriculum. But as soon as they get into a special education class, they're not being given the same kind of education that a young man or woman would be getting in a mainstream situation. So by the time they spend their elementary years in special ed, when they get into middle school, there's a great learning gap that exists between them and the mainstream students. And by the high school time, you can almost forget about it. So a lot of these boys go through the entire system, and they get what is called an IEP diploma at the end. And an IEP diploma is not worth the paper that it's written on. It is simply an attendance diploma saying that you were in school. And they allow these boys to walk across the stage with a full sense of accomplishment, knowing that what they're giving them is a piece of paper that is literally worthless. Now, that's just happening in the special ed section. But when you look at how these boys are being assessed and tracked, a lot of times these boys are being tracked for slower classes that are oversized, and by the time, again, that they get into high school or middle school where the work becomes more rigorous, it's not that they're not bright enough to do the work, it's that they have missed so much that the gap now exists. So you couple that situation with the social conditions of our community, and it's not popular to say, but as a result of the crack era, when you have grandparents raising grandchildren, and you have children that are born chemically dependent, and then when they go into the school medicates them more. So when you add all of these things, the social environment, the institutional racism, yes, a gap exists. And then that's when you see these boys getting in trouble and being disciplined more. The situation with Trayvon Martin is an extreme situation where a young man lost his life, but there are young boys every day who are being treated as Trayvon Martin, because what was George Zimmerman's rationale for Trayvon Martin? It was his perception of him. He saw a young man with a hoodie. He saw a young man with Skittles and all of this other stuff.
Fear.
And he said he's a threat. But that same attitude exists, and the same mentality exists with some of these teachers in the classroom who, when they see our boys doing what is natural to them, instead of perceiving it as energy that needs to be channeled and harnessed for good, they see it as a threat, they attack it, and in doing so, they destroy these young men.
I agree with you, and we're about to go to one of our callers who's on the line. And before I do that, I want to just definitely say that what you're saying is right about the fear and the false perception. I remember overhearing a teacher in the train talking on her cell phone as we were on an elevated platform, and she was telling a friend of hers, "Oh, these people are just evil. They're just terrible to work with. I can't deal with them," and da-da-da, and just going on about these people. So her perception of black people being ignorant of the 400 over 500 years now of combined chattel and mental slavery is not even in her calculation or her analysis of our people. She's only looking at the after effects and, of course, feeding on the food, as I mentioned, that is being touched by the media. We're going to go to one of our callers.
And let me just say this before you go to this caller. Because I understand that mentality. I understand it. But what I want to say is shame to the black teacher who now has the same mentality that if you close your eyes, you cannot tell whether or not you're listening to a black or white teacher, because many of the young teachers and senior teachers who are black are now coming in with that same mentality because they've been socialized through their interaction, with their union counterparts to now have the same mentality. When I hear a black teacher refer to black students as animals, that is troublesome. And then when you sit down and talk to these teachers and ask them, what has been the plight in the history of black history surrounding education in America? Or let's not even go to America. Let's go locally. Do you know about Ocean Hill, Brownsville? Do you know about the fight for community control? Do you know about the sacrifices that were made before you even walked into a school? For you to have that mentality, shame on you.
It is a shame, and they need to wake up quick, because that mentality and that spirit will not make it into the hereafter, which is right around the corner. And we're going to go to Cangela Moore. I believe that's her name, and we're going to plug her in right now. Are you ready, Brother Shango?
Yes, I am.
All right, here we go. Yes. Miss Moore? Cangela Moore? Are you there? This is Philip Muhammad. You're on the Sword of Resurrection show. Cangela Moore, can you hear me? I think.
Yes.
Are you there?
How are you?
Sister, how are you?
Can you hear me? Good.
Oh, yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Are you ready to engage in this conversation?
Yes, I am.
Yes, I have Brother Shango. Of course, he's been listening. And please tell us a little bit about yourself and your relationship to Brother Shango. And there's some feedback that I'm getting from you. I was
president at 109. And, I had my son go to this school because out of all the junior high schools in the area, this was the best school for him. I mean, junior high school and that age range, really, they're pretty much not the best schools out there. So the school was thriving. I thought that would be an environment for my child to go to. And, I really wanted my son to get the best education.
Okay. And what did your child ever say about Brother Shango and that education that he was receiving, in contrast to what may have happened, what he may have known about or may have experienced before Brother Shango became the principal?
Well, before he came, you said before he became a principal?
Right. The contrast, what I'm trying to say is, what was the contrast between Brother Shango coming in opposed to how the school was before, that your child could ever express to you? Like, was there a difference?
Well, yes, there was a major difference. I mean,
when
he was there, my son was thriving. He took part in the program for the nursing program. And after he left, all of those programs ended, every last one of them. And subsequently, I took my son out that same year that he left. So he didn't stay there. I mean, you could see a decline in the school. And it was just devastating to see how children were thriving, and all of a sudden now you have a situation where there's just chaos in the school.
And that chaos, could you describe it?
Well, there was a parent program where that parents would actually be involved. I mean, it was a community, so that parents actually were the eyes and ears of the school. So you had parents at the bus stop, parents all over the place, just watching the children as they enter into the building, and they were called the pets. You actually had a lot of different activities for parents, community. That is, you had the computer program. There was a lot of engagement with not just parents, but just the community as a whole. So you had that family environment, and all of a sudden you just had it ripped away. And that, in essence, was very devastating.
Right. And how did it affect your child? I mean, you had to remove him.
Well, you know, there was just a lot of fights that happened, a lot of things that were not inclusive to parents. Parents actually had no voice to be parent leaders in the school. And, you know, I really felt that my son would not thrive in that environment because now it's just, there was no accountability, there was no standards. And that was just very sad how just, you know, from years of building a school to now, you know, 2 weeks into it, there's no accountability, so everything was just run just crazy.
So do you feel that the PTA was neglected of a voice as well as a whole, or as individual parents? I mean, you just had no effect on
as a whole. I mean, it was documented. We wrote letters in regards to not being able to meet. We had, I mean, there was just a lot of things that we tried to do as parents that we were blocked from doing. And, you know, it was very sad because once you've taken the school away, now you strip the parents of their voice, so they have no say in their children's education. And that's the feedback, and that's what happened in that PTA following after Mr. Blake, Principal Blake.
And would you say that the parents were in support of the principal, and even in the DIM, even after the DIM reports and, you know, the things that the allegations, would you say that the parents as a whole, in being a member of the PTA, were in support of Brother Shango?
The parents as a whole were in support, but what we had is different dynamics in that school. We had a large non-English speaking population, and they really did not understand the dynamics and what was going on. They understood it after the fact. And, you know, it was interesting when you're trying to engage parents and letting them know what you have. And it's not just sending your kids to school, and now all of a sudden, now they look at what the school environment is, and they say, what happened? Well, we've been trying to tell you what happened, that, you know, the principal is no longer here, and the principal was the glue to the school. And that was the major problem that we foreseen in that.
I see. And as far as the hierarchy within the school system, what would you rate it in regards to race relations? I mean, we know as a people we are suffering from discriminatory practices that are being, pit against us. And as a parent in a parent-teachers association, how would you rate the school system based upon your experience?
Well, based upon my experience, I mean, as a parent, I really seek out those schools that are thriving, and it's very unfortunate. I mean, there's been studies as of recently to explain the disparity in regards to different nationalities that are in the New York City public school system, which is predominantly black and Hispanic, but yet we're receiving the worst quality education across the country. I mean, the statistics are there. I mean, as a parent, the only thing I can say is, as parents, and as overall, we really have to have a voice and speak up. I know economics and things really take a toll when you're trying to pay the bills, but it takes the village to actually come back and see what's going on. And that's the major issue. We could talk about race, but at the same time, if you don't have people advocating and standing up and saying, having expectations of your children's education, of your community, then you're going to have these things. And that's what I saw and what was going on, that people just fell to the wayside and not standing up and actually, you know, knowing what the significance, the fight was to keep this principle there.
And where does your child go to school now?
My child is in school in the community, and it's the same issue.
Is it a parochial school?
Still trying. No, public school system.
Okay.
And that's my goal is actually to keep them there in the New York City public school system and hold them accountable. But again, when there's very few parents that are aware of basically their stand in regards to holding teachers, holding principals, holding the community responsible for these schools. I mean, it takes a village.
It takes a village. You're right. And Brother Shango, I'm sure you will echo her in what she's saying, and that leads right into the solution period that we're going to get into, because solutions is what we need. I don't think, as a parent myself, that we're going to get any results begging this system to do anything more for us as we see it in its slow death phase right now. I think it's more important for us right now to, make a correct assessment of the situation and seek alternative solutions such as supporting parochial schools and also homeschooling. Brother Shango, is there anything you'd like to ask or mention while we have our sister, Ms. Moore, Kangela, on the line?
Well, how you doing, Sister Angela?
How are you doing, Blake?
Yeah, well, good. Yeah. I want to say that, one of the, she had mentioned about how they wrote letters and they were trying to, get involved and their voices weren't being heard. And, if we want to speak about solutions, I can tell you that parent involvement is a term that's thrown out there because it sounds politically correct. And it really pays lip service to parents. One of the things that I've always heard the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan say is that a leader is a servant. You're not there to rule over people, but you're there to provide a service to people, and that requires humility. And I tried to follow his example when I was the principal of that school. And what I mean by that is I never like the term parent involvement because it implies that you're going to involve parents with an agenda that you already have put forth. Parent engagement or parent partnership, where we come to the table as equal partners and we sit down and we come to some consensus about what we are trying to accomplish. And Sister Kendra will remember, I used to always say this in the meetings, that we are going to have arguments because we're not always going to see eye to eye. You have one lens from a parent perspective, and I may have another lens from a school leader's perspective. However, if we argue, and we're arguing about the best way to serve children, then the children never lose. I might lose the argument one day. A parent might lose the argument the next day, but the children never lose because we're arguing about the right thing. So as a school leader, you can't be thin-skinned and you can't be so insecure that you're not willing to listen to other voices and bring them into the school to work together. One of the things that happens with principals in particular is that some of us, and I know there's some principals listening to that today. They may not cue in, but they're listening. Some of us do not like to give what we perceive as our power up. And so we feel like we have to make all the decisions in the school. And in doing so, no one has eyes everywhere that they can make all these different decisions. But when you extend your influence by giving up your decision making. If Kangela is more qualified in one regard to make a decision than I am, then I shouldn't feel threatened by that. I should embrace that, and by her taking it and running with it and taking ownership over it, it actually extends my influence in terms of what I'm trying to accomplish over the school. So I don't think that these principal programs are really teaching principals how to really lead. And that if we're going to talk about solutions, can you hear me?
Yes,
if we're going to talk about solutions,
there's some feedback on the line right now. Let's try to minimize the feedback.
That's background noise. But if we're going to talk about solutions, we have to talk about solutions from the perspective of retraining principals not just to be instructional leaders, where they're just only concerned about the academics and the curriculum, We have to teach them how to be community leaders and learn how to go out into the community and utilize the resources in the community to make a better school.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, just recently I spoke to a graduate who didn't know how he didn't know how to extract 10% from 100, and he was a college graduate, you know. And as a brother, I was stunned by it. I said, "My God, you don't know basic fractions and percentages. You can't calculate that. I mean, how did you get through the school system?" I mean, this is going through my mind, and I remembered all the things that you just mentioned about the system. It just pushes our children through and out the back door, you know, and those that make it through the front door, you know, in the fashion that they came in, their mind is really not focused, but rather created. They've been formed into a slave. So there's another caller. So I just want to thank Sister Cangela for coming on the line, and you know, God bless you and your family. You know, I really pray for you and your child and all of our children that we find success in doing for self, because going and like I said, begging these people to do anything for us is just immature at this point. But thank you so much, and have a blessed day.
Thank you.
We're going to go to another caller at this time, who's been waiting patiently, and let's go right in. Yes, peace. Caller, you're on the line.
Hello?
Yes, peace. Oh. This is Philip Muhammad. You are on the Swords of Resurrection show, and you are?
My name is Keola McDonald.
Yes, please say your name again. There's some background noise.
My name is Keola McDonald.
Oh, okay.
And I'm calling
Keola McDonald.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm calling on behalf of Shango-Blake. I also worked with him and Roosevelt High School and also Yonkers Public School. And I'm calling because he's been an excellent principal. I mean, I just go say, and without his support, that school would have not been successful as it was. I mean, he has went into communities, helped young people, him and myself, continue to stop fights against other, kids that will have gang fights, and we will continue to keep the peace. Mr. Blake has been 100% effective, and I think that he's a wonderful person.
Well, we want to thank you for your comment and for waiting patiently to make that comment. Brother Shango, is there anything you'd like to say to your supporter?
Well, I thank you for your support, and that's a person who truly knows, because she was actually there the day that I actually had the situation where they said I ran down the teachers, and was an eyewitness to that and saw what the mob scene was like. So she knows about the struggle.
Well,
so you
I definitely know about the struggle. The thing about it is with Blake, Blake is a powerful man, and he has always been a target as his effectiveness. People don't want change. So when you see somebody making change, there's always going to be an opposer. I mean, I have not seen to this date, besides some of our leaders that have passed, to do the work that Blake has done. And he's my role model. He's also my family's model. We respect him, and we congratulate him, and we wish him well.
Oh, thank you so much for your comment, and have a blessed day, and thank you so much for calling in. Please continue to listen to our show.
We will. You have a good day.
All right, have a nice
Brother
day.
Philip.
Yes.
One of the things I want to say is that there are, I know a lot of principals who are doing the same kind of work in their communities. And I tell you, the ones who are doing this kind of work, every last one of them that I know have been under some kind of attack or some investigation or what have you. And so, that's something to be looked into. It goes back to what I said initially. It's not the fact of just being merely black. It's when you're not afraid to stand up,
to speak up against the system. When you're not afraid to speak up against the system.
Yes,
I'm agreeing with what you're saying.
And in reality, why does it have to be that when you speak we need to probe that. Why is it when you are pro your community, you're pegged as anti the system? And the only rationale that I can come up with is that the system is not set up to really produce any greatness within our children. So going into that system, I wasn't naive. I understood that I was going into that system to try to extract, the best out of that system, which is our children. And it goes back to something that I learned in the nation. What is the meaning of FOI? Right? Establish a beachhead in enemy territory and proceed to take control. So when I went in not as someone who was gullible. I knew I was in enemy territory, but I was going in to extract what was trapped in that enemy territory, the jewels that exist with our children. But any black man who stands up and says, I'm going to do what's in the best interest of our community comes under attack. Now, I know of a superintendent, a gentleman by the name of Bernard Gassaway. He wrote about black male principles. You know what he said? He said that black males are endangered. He said black male principles are an endangered species in New York City Department of Education. He said
black males as a whole are endangered species.
They're told subtly by supervisors, many of whom never walked in their shoes, to stay in their place. As a result, there is a blanket fear that renders many principles ineffective. He said superintendents use principles as scapegoats. They don't get me wrong. This is him talking. Don't get me wrong. An incompetent principal should be removed. However, we must acknowledge that black males, the few that we have, are given the most challenging schools. Schools that are out of control requires principals to make tough decisions. You make mistakes when you have a school like this. There is no room for cover your behind mentality when you are leading the school out of chaos. And this is what needs to be examined. We don't get the healthy school. We get the school after it's run down. It's like President Obama. When he was running for president and people were doubting whether or not he was going to be president, I had a conversation with my father. I said, he's going to be president. My father said, why is he going to be president? I said, because America's run down. They
needed choice. They needed something else.
Things it's already run down so that they can use us as a scapegoat when everything fell. Now, in my situation, I surprised them. I wasn't supposed to succeed. And that's what made me a greater target and a greater threat.
So it goes to show that success on this level wasn't important to them. What was important to them was that they maintained control. So if
maintain social order, not control. The social
control doesn't mean it's going to benefit us.
Yeah, because
that's not the kind of control they wanted.
Feeders to prison.
Right. Now we're going to get that. That goes right into my next question. Right, we go to Shango. I want to jump into this because we're running out of time. My next question to you, as a principal, I know you're privy to lots of information. So I want to ask you, at what level do other agencies, or not even agencies, but other businesses have a hand in the control of what you get told to do? In other words, how does the prison industry complex work with the educational system, which we know now is corporate owned?
Yes. All we have to do is do our research. They actually build prisons based upon the third grade reading scores. Okay, and if you look at most state budgets, they put more money into corrections than they put into education. So if you see a child in the third grade and you realize that based upon his scores, he's going to not do well, and subsequently he may be in a social situation that will lead him into the doorways of prison, rather than invest your money in prevention and correction, the money is vested in building prisons because you know you're going to have a population that's not going to be able to function well in society. Now, if you look at most prisoners, they have come out of special ed. There is a correlation between, if you do the research and poll them, you'll find either special ed, you'll find literacy issues, you'll find dropout issues. So if we put the resources and the money into, talking from a solution standpoint, into correcting the problem, then we would actually prevent them from going into jail. But if you do that, now you're messing with the economy. Okay? And
so without a safety net, they end up in jail.
Yeah, and one of the things I did at my school is that when we were looking at the trends of the dropout rate, is that we started a manhood training program. And we didn't wait for these young boys to get in trouble. We developed all male classes. We taught them at different times. We put black male teachers in front of them as role models, and we took them on several trips as an incentive. And we called them men, and we pumped up the idea of manhood, and we redefined what manhood was. We took those men to those young boys to the anniversary of the Million Man March so they could get that experience. So these are the kind of things that we did. All of those young men graduated from my school. All of them are still in high school. Two of the young men who were older at the time are now in their first year of college. And the correction started at the junior high school level, and it really needs to start today, younger than that. But I just want to say, because I know we're pressed for time, you started the conversation talking about the economy and what was happening within the economy. That also impacts what's happening in the school system. Do you know that because of all of the corporate greed and scandal and these companies letting these people go, a lot of these former corporate leaders are now school principals. They came from the corporate world when the collapse happened. And so you have people in the school system that actually got fast-tracked to be principals. They didn't go to the appropriate qualifications. That's like a doctor not getting fast-tracked to do heart surgery. And they're in there, and they are running schools, and they don't understand the social issues, the cultural issues. They're not connected or vested in the community. And if you look at the structure of the Department of Ed, it has a corporate model now. It's all about stats and numbers. It's not about human beings. That's why it's called the Department of Education. It used to be called the Board of Education.
Board of Education,
you have community control. So now you have a different structure.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, I want to go into... Wait, are you not finished? Because I want to go into the next recording that we have of Chancellor Joel Klein.
Before you do that, let me say this before you do that, because we spoke about it earlier, and I want to be clear on this program. I did not beat up any little boy. Okay, and what you're dealing with is when you have someone who's effective at that level, you have to malign their character to the degree that people don't want to mess with them. So I was too successful for them to come up with any cheap financial charge, so they had to make my charge or my allegation so egregious. Oh, he beat up his child. Well, what parent would want their children in a school where the principal's out of control and beating up children? You know,
well, in this society, that is... I'm sorry.
There were all the eyewitnesses that were there when I had to confront the young man about bringing a trespasser into my school will tell you I never put my hands on that child. In that investigation, not only did they disregard the eyewitnesses who were there, they threatened them with termination if they didn't change their story. And the two eyewitnesses who were there said we would rather face termination than to lie and change our stories just to keep our jobs.
Were they able to, did they come to court and support you?
Yeah, wait a minute. This is important to me because my whole career has been built on helping the children that the system has no regard for. And so what they did was they came at me trying to make me be the actual opposite of what I am. Doesn't this sound familiar? Don't they do this with Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan? Don't they make him appear to be a boogeyman to the very people that he was born to save? So if any one of us, it just shows you that if we step up on our little microcosm and walk not even a mile, because we can't walk a mile in his shoes, but if we try to follow him just a little bit, we have to expect this. That's why I don't have any problem with dealing with this. I'm not throwing myself to the party. Because I understand it from a spiritual standpoint that hard trials are necessary to establish truth. But guess what? When I'm done, by Allah's permission, the truth will be known.
Now, this is the difference, ladies and gentlemen, from when you are a learned man under a 6,000-year tutelage opposed to a 76 to 78 trillion-year knowledge of self. So I want to go into this next recording of the former school chancellor, Joel Klein, who was also bearing witness to Brother Shango's works.
Has to do with a lot of things that have come together at IS 109. You know, Shango-Blake just said there are a lot of critics. Let me tell you something, Shango. Anything worth doing is going to have a lot of critics. Anybody can walk the same old walked-on path, get the same old results, and try to find excuses for why things don't change. Or you can be a leader, and you can say, no, at IS 109, we are going to have an entirely different kind of a school where children are performing at the top of the city, a school where there's discipline and order and a sense of community and a sense of values, a school that we can look to as something of pride in our community, where our parents will want more and more of those children to come. Yeah, you can have that kind of vision. It takes a special person. It takes someone like Shango-Blake, who's not willing to settle for average or ordinary, who thinks kids at his school, African-American children, can lead the way in New York City, and he is right, and I am going to support him every inch of the way, let me assure you. No, Shango, Theodore Roosevelt said, and I want you to remember these words, about 1912, he was in France speaking at a university. He gave a very famous speech in which he said, it is not the critic who counts. It is the man in the arena. And Shango-Blake, you are the man in the arena to transform this school. I've had the privilege to talk to Shango. I've had the opportunity to visit his school, to see what's going on there. I talk to parents, who they call themselves pests, and let me tell you, sometimes I do think, Jeannie, don't hold me to this, every now and again you get a parent who's a pest. But the best pests in the city of New York are the parents of 109 who are fighting for their school. They're there in the school, sending the right message to those children. And what I have seen is not just a sense of a community transforming itself, not just parents who are excited, not just teachers who are doing things above and beyond what's called for, teachers who are working all the time with these children. What I have seen is we're getting results. There's a sense of excitement, and it's captured in this DVD. You know, I watched the DVD over Christmas. Because Shango.
Okay, so Shango, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. Now, we have one more caller on the line, but I want to give you a moment to respond to what the listeners just heard. Do you have any comments based upon what was just
Yeah, he was the one who terminated me.
Wow.
So, and let me tell you, when he said what he said, he was sincere when he said it. But the forces that want to control the education of our children had him punk out and put him under pressure to go against me.
And he's now the former chancellor. How did that become? How did he become a former chancellor?
Well, he became a former chancellor because he ultimately left the school system and went into the private sector. But when he was the chancellor of the school, he supported me. But when those forces, and I don't want to make this spooky and mysterious. I'm being very clear, and I'm going to call them out. Okay, the school commissioner of investigators office, who has broad powers to even investigate him as a chancellor, the political power of the United Federation of Teachers, and I'm not against teachers. I had an opportunity to bring in some beautiful teachers in my school, and they did a wonderful work, and I will always be indebted for what they did to the children. But I'm talking about the union now, and unions take on a different dynamic when you go into black schools. they take on a different attitude and posture. And so I'm not talking about the good work that the union does. I'm talking about what the union does when they come into urban schools and urban communities. They find ways to protect incompetent teachers. And they have lobbyists and political power to actually come against a school leader that they don't like. And some of our silly black teachers believe that the union is there really to support them. But if you know the truth about the union, I'm going to go back to Ocean Hill, Brownsville, when the community was fighting for community controls of school, it was the United Federation of Teachers that went on strike, not because they wanted more money or better work conditions. They went on strike because they were directly opposed to African-American people controlling what goes on within the context of the schools in their community. That is an actual documented fact.
Well, I agree. We got some background noise going on. There's another caller on the line, Brother Shango, and I could go to them we only have 12 minutes left. So let me just go to this final caller, and then we can make closing statements, and we could, close the show out. Let me get to this call, okay? All right. You are on the air. This is Philip Muhammad, and you're on the Sword of Resurrection show. Could you please state your name?
It's Taisha. How are you?
I'm fine, Taisha, and thank you so much for joining us today. And would you like to make have a question or a statement?
Yeah, well, actually not a question. I just wanted to confirm what Brother Shango was pretty much stating. I also worked for the district that he worked in. I was actually employed during that time, but I was working at another school at the time, and I was having rave reviews from the teachers that were supportive of Brother Shango, of the things that he was doing over there. The parents loved him, the kids loved him, and everything. And it's funny because when I used to work there for the district, I also was supportive of making sure that our children was, educated and, pushed in the direction of finishing college. And, there's a lot, just being supportive and nurturing of our children, as well as other nationalities. I mean, a child is a child to me, but when they saw that the love that I was giving the children, and they saw the responses of, how my interactions were, to the point where a lot of the kids didn't go to the counselors or the social workers there. They came straight to me, and that wasn't my job function, which that was a negative on me as well. So the whole thing is like anytime you love your children, or anytime you love, the whole thing is that they hate people who are doing something other than what they believe should be done. And I've also have persecuted by the same district that Brother Shango has worked for. So I just wanted to confirm that a lot of those things that he went through is definitely for real. It's very racist out there. They don't give it. The kids are really, unfortunately, at a disadvantage because of the people that are there, and the teachers that they hire are teachers that they select based on what they feel. It's really interesting, a lot of stories that I heard. So that's what I wanted to say. I totally support teaching our own and homeschooling and charter schools and stuff like that. Get them from under the government for real, because we're going to lose our kids, and there's a lot of them dying every day at the hands of each other because they have lost hope. So that's pretty much. But thank you for I just wanted to give that statement.
Well, thank you so much for your call. We really appreciate you. Have a blessed night.
You too.
Now, Brother Shango, there's one last question I want to ask you. She just butchers everything that we said, but I want to ask you one question. Why do you feel that? Can you hear me? Okay. Why do you feel, or better yet, why isn't there any black scientists out there? I mean, I'm asking you that because we're not producing scientists, we're not producing farmers, and we're not producing masters of science and agriculture. And why is that, in your opinion? I know you touched on some of it, but those programs are not
I will say this to you. That was one of the reasons why we put the pre-nursing program in the school, to push students to start to go towards the medical field and the science and the physics and things of that nature. That's such a deep question, brother. That's a whole show in and of itself. But I will say
that's why we're going to have to do a part 2.
Quickly, the reason why we don't see it is because these programs are not embedded in the school. When you look at the curriculum in the city, it's very watered down. It doesn't deal with higher order thinking skills. And so, therefore, a science project is a project on a cardboard. Now, when we were growing up, you had to do a full-fledged science project with volcano and lava and all that. And now it's just put a couple of pictures on a cardboard and explain hypothesis.
And that's sufficient.
So, it's the dumbing down of the science curriculum. And even when I was a principal in the school, they were talking about trying to make science higher on the standards. But we were overdoing it with the programs that we had in our school.
I found another problem that we have also.
Because that really is another show.
That's another show. And I also want to say something else, because I'm going to have to do some plugging because we're getting ready to close out. But before I go any further, I just want to say that as adults, we have to demand this. And I think that there's a lot of websites that are out that are black-owned that don't even have science sections. We have sections dealing with gossip, like there's gossip sites. There's all kinds of sites out there, but all of the websites do not have science sections on them. And I'm just going to say on behalf of our people, for those of you who are webmasters who have websites that are catered to our people, you need to put science sections there, sections about agriculture, so that we can know about growing our own food, black farmers, black scientists and inventors. I want to thank everyone for reaching out and calling as well. And Brother Shango, if you have any last statements, we have about 5 minutes left. So you can go ahead and take your phone.
2 things. If you'd like to reach me, you can reach me on Twitter at Shango-Blake, or you can write me on Facebook at Shango-Blake Speaks. And I have to make this one shout out to a young progressive by the name of Darlene Aikens. Check out Miss Black Collegiate USA Scholarship Pageant. It's a beautiful pageant dealing with our young women.
Say that one more time.
The Miss Black Collegiate USA Scholarship Pageant. You can go on MissBlackCollegiateUSA.com. And the theme of the pageant is exposing our minds, not bodies. Check it out. It's very powerful for the young sisters.
Wow, that's a beautiful plug, brother. And I want to thank you, Brother Shango, for being on the show. And I want to thank everybody for listening in. We're just starting. We're just getting our feet wet. This is our second show on the Sword of Resurrection show, and we want to thank Brother Shango for bringing his Sword of Resurrection. I'm sure everyone who was listening was edified and learned something and was able to harness this information and shed some light in your corners of this world. I want to thank you again, and I want to tell everyone to please support God's Water Entertainment. God's Water Entertainment is my personal company. We're striving to do better shows like this, better entertainment, and better value of media content. And if you'd like to make a donation, go to godswater7.com. Scroll down. There's a PayPal button. You can make a donation there. Again, that's GODSWATER7.com. Also, we want to ask you all to please support and read the Final Call newspaper. The toll-free number is 866-602-1230. It's the only international paper that is not connected to the international banking system and is also black-owned. And its publisher is a publisher of peace, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and, of course, the Nation of Islam. Brothers and sisters and others, we want to all of the people of the right for listening to our show. Everyone, have a good night. And, Brother Shango, thank you for being a guest on our show.
Thank you again. It was my pleasure.
All right. Peace, everyone.
Peace.
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 Peace, everyone.